wow. Oh, wow. Okay, so first of all, Sarah, she had to introduce herself. This woman is amazing. She has been with Skirt Sports since the second year in, and even with all the shenanigans, and I know some people dug up some old shenanigans and shared it in the group, she's still here. And she doesn't get recognized enough because, like Rebecca and a bunch of other people, she is behind the scenes. So without her, we wouldn't have inventory because she orders it, okay? So any sucking up you ever want to do, throw it that way for sure. And your leadership is amazing, Sarah, and I have watched you grow over all the years, and I'm just like absolutely blown away. So good job, Sarah. Yeah. So I'm just going to double down on all the thanks to everybody, and thanks to you for getting your butts out of wherever they were and here to Boulder and into the Embassy Suites for 2 days of amazing love, light, happiness, positivity, all the good stuff. I wanted to open with a little something that one of my yoga instructors said. So back in the day, I thought yoga wasn't a sport. Because I did triathlons, so I was always breathing hard and going forwards, and I was like, well, yoga, you're just like stretching. So I thought, okay, all the Boulder moms, all they do is yoga and hike. Well, fast forward like 10 years, you know what I do? Yesterday I went for a hike, and today I did yoga. My kid just thinks I do yoga, that's all she thinks I do. She doesn't know anything I've ever done before that. I'm going to yoga again. But anyway, I do like yoga. Yoga's cool, and it's a supplement to some of the other crazy fun things I do. So anyway, I went to a class the other day, and my instructor, who never says anything, he opened up with a really cool little speech that got me thinking. He said, I realized the other day that there's really just 4 questions, and here they are. First question is, where are you? And the answer is here. And the next question is, what time is it? And the answer is now. And the third question is, where do you live? And the answer is, in my heart. And the fourth question is, what day is it? And the answer is, it's the best day of my life. Today, right now. It's the best day of your life. Do you feel it? Are you feeling it? Yeah. And you know what tomorrow's going to be? The best day of your life. And the next day and the next day. And if you can do those 3 questions that lead up to that, you will always have the best day of your life. And then I thought a little more about what does it mean to really be able to take that in and have the best day. And I realized that it's about opening. And I thought about what you're going to do here and what your job is for 2 days. And I realized, well, your job is to just be open. Last year we had some people who came to the retreat and we heard from them afterward. We didn't hear from them a lot during the retreat. And a couple of them reached out to us and said, I came to the retreat and I just watched what was going on. And I felt like I wasn't really a part of it. Until the very last day, like I was crossing the finish line, and all of a sudden I felt open and I was a part of it. And then I wished that I had done that from the beginning of the retreat. Does anyone relate to this? Some of you may be feeling a little bit like that now, although it might be hard because we really packed you together in these tables. You can't really just sit there and watch. But that's your job. Your job is to be open, because when you're open, life changes. You're receptive to things, to anything, to ideas, to relationships, to connections. Being open is a side effect of positivity. Positivity is about opening up, and who doesn't want to be the most positive person in the world? Everyone wants to be that, right? So what's your job this weekend? Be open. Be open. So I want to tell you a story about a time that I was open. And something happened that changed my life. You want to hear it?
Yes.
You ready for this? All right. So it was December of 2003. And I was out on a training run in Lyons, Colorado. And I was slugging along because it was the off season, and at that time in my life, I was actually racing as a professional triathlete. I was living this pro triathlete lifestyle. And in the pro triathlon world, you take an off season. Off season was like November, December. And so back in those days, I was both eating meat and drinking beer. Now I am the sober vegan. You want a fun person to hang out at a party, invite the sober vegan. Tonight I was a cheating though, because that lobster was good. That means cheating vegan, by the way. It's allowed. So on that day, I was sort of feeling the off-season blues, like I had probably put on a few pounds, and I was sluggish, and I was probably a little hungover or something. And I'm running along, and I looked at my reflection in the storefront window, and my first thought when I saw myself was, I look like a boy. And my second thought was, I am totally uninspired. And my third thought was, why can't I just feel pretty when I'm out here training? Yeah, thank you. And then I had a little conflicting thought of like, was this vanity speaking, or is this about feeling like myself? And I realized that it wasn't necessarily about looking a certain way. It was about feeling like I was taking my whole self out there. Because back in the day, fitness clothing was all black. It was made by men for men, or they were guessing at what women's bodies actually looked and felt like. Well, I don't know if that actually makes sense. If they were guessing at what they felt like, but they weren't making clothes that fit our bodies, right? And that day I was in all black clothing, and it fit me poorly, and my head, I had like a beanie on that made my head look like a peanut. I was all smashed in there, and I just didn't feel like myself. And that word pretty became more important as I ran. So important that that day I didn't even finish my run. I felt the shift that was happening inside me. Some kind of energy was starting to bubble up, and it was like, there is a problem out there, and you might be able to solve it. Could I actually do this? Could I create something that might change the way I feel when I'm out there? So when I got home that day, I wrote down a bunch of words on this little piece of paper, and it started with the word pretty. And underneath it, I wrote, women's fitness clothing that you look and feel good wearing. Yeah. How basic is that? No one was doing it. There was either performance clothing or casual cute stuff or board shorts from Roxy. There was nothing awesome for women who wanted to include their whole selves. And then I wrote, I want to do what Venus and Serena did in tennis because they're badass. They wear whatever they want and they're crushing it. And then I said, you know what? I think I also want to do what Juicy Sweats did because they took the most frumpy thing in the world, which was sweatpants, which if you just wore your sweatsuit out, people were like, oh my gosh, what is going on with her? She must be depressed. And they just slapped the word juicy on the butt and used velour, and all of a sudden it was like women were like swaggering around the grocery store in the juicies, and then sweatpants were cute. And I thought, maybe I could do that in fitness, clothing. No one's done this. And so I knew that I was onto something, and this idea was real. And I started to say it out loud, started to tell people. And I realized that what I was saying was, I want to start a clothing company. That's a big thing. How do you do that? And I remember when I told Tim, I think I want to start a clothing company, and he was like, okay. It was great, but how do you do that? And I was like, well, Tim, I see a lot of people out there wearing clothing. You're wearing clothing, that person's wearing clothing, that guy over there is wearing clothing. Like somebody figured out how to start a clothing company, so I'm gonna figure it out. I'm smart, I'm driven. And that's what I did. So I spent the next 9 months learning, and my mind was like blowing up every day because while I had been working my body for years, my mind hadn't been stretched in this way, and I was just learning something new, and I was open. Every day I was open. And I was interacting with so many different people, and I was touching and feeling fabrics, and I was learning the difference between a knit and a woven, and how different flat lock seams might not itch. Oh, let's not talk about itching. Sorry. Yeah, let's put that season behind us. But at the same rate, I was still racing as a professional triathlete because I hadn't quit my day job. You know, I wasn't sure if this skirt project was going to go anywhere, but I was definitely consumed by the idea. And in my heart, I thought it might be my next thing. So I decided that there may be a perception that if you wear a skirt, you might not be a serious athlete. That might be something people would think. So I decided, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do an Ironman and I'm gonna test a prototype of one of these skirts I'm dreaming about. So I signed up for the 2004 Ironman Wisconsin. It's a good race. And on September 12th, I came off of the 2.4 mile swim in Madison, Wisconsin, and the 112 mile bike in 3rd place. And I knew that I had a shot at winning this race. But if I was going to win the race, I would have to have a very special day and maybe a secret weapon. So as I'm going through sitting in the transition area, going through all my stuff in my transition bag, I looked down and I saw it. And I just took a deep breath and I said, this is it, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because if I don't take that step forward, Aaron Jett with Humble Pie, if you don't take that step forward when you know you need to and your heart says it, you look back and maybe I would have had a great race without the skirt, it wouldn't have meant as much. So I put that skirt on that day. And it wasn't just a skirt, it was actually 2 little pieces of red mesh fabric sewn onto an elastic race belt, and it was much more like a loincloth. But it did what I wanted it to do, because back in the day we were wearing a swimsuit for a marathon run. And I wanted to cover my butt, I wanted to give myself some fun, and I wanted to, of course, have a pocket. We know how important pockets are. So I snapped that thing on and I started running. And I have never been in a race where I felt so much energy coming my way. I heard the word skirt through the entire 26.2 miles. At first it was, what is she wearing? Is that a skirt? Is that a skirt? I don't know if that's a skirt. Do I like it? Do I not like it? I don't know, but she's wearing a skirt. It's different. And I ran along, and as I went, that mumbling changed. And at about 10K left to go in the race, when I took the lead and they saw me coming, instead of, is that a skirt? You know what they said when they saw me coming? It's the skirt! She's winning! The skirt's winning! And whether I realized it or not at the moment, my identity changed on the race course from Nicole, professional athlete, to Nicole, the skirt. And so that day, I came across the finish line in 1st place, wearing a prototype of the first ever skirt professional triathlon competition. And it was awesome. It was an amazing feeling. I almost didn't make it because I almost started hyperventilating right at the finish because I realized I was winning. People were like, get there! Yeah, right. But when I got to the finish line, it took a few minutes, you know, and the feelings of crossing a finish line settle on you. Whether you win or you lose or you're DFL, right? It matters no matter what place you are. And on a day like that, it was interesting. When I was a pro triathlete, I got drug tested after events. So you don't get to hang out with the crowd and like hug everyone. They're like, okay, these people go to the back room in the, you know, porta potties and wait until you compete. So they gather up the pro athletes that they were going to drug test. And they kind of march you back, and you're allowed an advocate or a support person with you. And it was weird because as I started walking back, I started to have this like physical reaction that I've had before, but not in the same way. I just started crying. And I started crying in a different way than the usual post-race cry. Has anyone experienced the post-race cry? Yes. You know what I'm talking about. This was more like kind of a sobbing thing. I was sort of like kept crying. And I sat in that back room with 3 or 4 other athletes and their advocates and me alone sitting in the back room. And I was crying and I couldn't stop. And I was sort of like, just, stop crying. And I'm looking at them and they're looking at me like, why is she crying? She just won. They're like mad at me because you just beat me and now you're crying. So it was interesting because eventually I peed and I got out of there. But I had come to this race alone. I was all alone. My husband didn't come, and that's a whole nother speech, okay? And I was staying with a homestay, and this is a funny side note, but when I got to my homestay's house, he had 2 kids, and they had like total boogers the whole weekend. And looking back, like, I knew I'd already turned a corner because there's no, if I had walked in that house with my husband Tim and we were trying to win like the Hawaii Ironman, we would have taken one look at the boogers and turned around and gone to a hotel. But I stayed because I think I knew that I craved connection and I didn't really want to be alone. So I laid in my bedroom, my homestay that night. I couldn't sleep. Every muscle in my body was actually twitching. I've never experienced this before or since. I literally laid there, like, it was just twitching, like that. And then crying a little bit, and then realizing, like, something big happened out there. What does this all mean? Whatever it is, whatever I do with this thing that just happened, I'm gonna do it with people. I'm gonna do it together with a community. I am not gonna do this alone. And so 3 days later, I incorporated Skirt Sports Inc. on September 15th, 2004. Made it real. And just a few months after that, we took about 500 skirts down to the Austin Marathon. And we had fun. There were about 5 women. We had, our mascot was actually a blow-up doll. Her name was Judy Smooch. She's gonna come up later, I know. We were crazy. We had skirts, we had the original Marathon Girl, Trix, and the original Trix Gym Girl, and they were in colors like Smooch, and Shiny Latte, and Daiquiri. We named them after alcoholic drinks. Again, this was before I stopped drinking. And we were just having the best time. We were just having fun. We were just tapping into that bubbling well of energy that we all have within us that comes out when we're around people who also have that energy. You know what I mean? I know you do, because you're sitting here amongst other women who have that energy. Thank you. And people were coming up to our booth. Our booth was so crowded. It was so busy the whole time because they were like, I don't even know what these are, but I must have one. And I'm going to break the cardinal rule and wear it in the marathon tomorrow. And like, the skirts were not perfect. We sold a ton of them, and I saw these women running in the marathon, and the marathon girl turned into the marathon girl that day. If you got one of those first 500, whoop, straight up. But like, nobody cared. It was like, they didn't try to return them. Well, I don't know if we take them back, but they were like, I just want to see what they're gonna do next, because this is too fun. So, think again about your job today. I think again about what it took to start this company. The first step was being open, right? To receiving, to being open. So what's your job? Yeah. Are you open right now? Yes. Yeah. Somebody's mouth is open. They're still eating the lobster stuff. Is that you, Emily Harvey? I like it. But before you can be open to really like receive from others and take in what's all around you, you do have to make sure that you're willing to be open with yourself. So I have this fun story. I have a 7-year-old girl. She just graduated 1st grade, and she's sassy, and her name's Wilder. And if you follow me on social media, you know Wilder DeBoom. So I picked her up from school the other day, and I was taking her to gymnastics. And every day before school, I look at her, I look her in the eye, she's standing in the line, I say, wait, one sec, look at me. And I say, be good, listen to your teacher, and be nice to everyone. And then I always follow it with, and have the best day ever. Okay, that's our thing. Say it every day. I said it every day of first grade and kindergarten. And sometimes she's like, yeah, Mom, be good, listen to your teacher, be nice to everyone. And have the best day ever, okay? So when I pick her up from school, I always ask her, how's your day? Did you have the best day ever? And she usually says, yeah. And then I say, well, what else do you remember about today? And the only thing she ever remembers is who she sat next to at lunch. That's it. It's like nothing else happened at school, ever, but lunch. Until this day, when I was driving her in the car and I said, you have the best day ever? And she said, well, yeah, except for when my friend told me that she didn't want to be my friend anymore and made me cry. And I immediately, first of all, felt like I wanted to punch the friend. She wasn't even in the car with us. And if she was, I promise I wouldn't have punched her. But I just went into like hyper-protective mode, and I was like, wait a minute, what? What friend? Her? Okay, so what did she say exactly? And I start grilling her, you know, from the front seat, and I'm like looking in the rearview mirror, and I can see her, she's sort of like annoyed with me. And then I could tell she was like regretting that she even said it. And then finally she goes, Mom, will you just stop worrying about me and worry about yourself for a second? And that is the exact reaction I had. At first it hit me like, oh, that was fucking funny. And then I was like, but you know, she's kind of right. Like, I spend a lot of my life worrying about other people and trying to make sure that they have the best life ever and the best day ever. And I hope you all have the best day ever, right? And I spend a lot of my own time and energy worrying about that. And I think it's important that we turn that around sometime. And maybe we change the word worry to focus and love and embrace ourselves a little bit more. And so as you do your job and you think about being open with others, I want you to make sure that when you go home tonight, before you go to bed, that you do a deep dive, just a quick one, and you just say, can I just make sure I'm open with myself first? Okay, you got that? Can you do that? You can do that. So you're gonna show up on the hike and you're all gonna be like, I'm open! Definitely open. So this weekend, it's about joy. It's about connection, right? And it's truly about celebration. You know, the race on Sunday, how many of you doing the 5K? Yeah, I like it. You know, that 5K, you're going to be joined by close to 80 running start beginners and 80 winners. Some of you are motivated. So be ready for that infusion of inspiration. Who's doing the 10K? Wow, cool. And how many of you are doing the 13? Oh, wow, okay. Awesome. You know, I always like to think of the race as truly just a celebration of your fitness. The race is a celebration of your body, your fitness, your training. The retreat is a celebration of your soul. And that's what we hope to fill just a little bit more while you're here in some way. So I'm going to end with a quote by a famous artist. Okay, you ready? If we took a holiday, took some time to celebrate, just one day out of life, it would be so nice. Everybody spread the word. Oh yeah. All right, bring it. Oh wow, look at that. Does anyone dance on the stage with me? Come on. Nobody wants to dance with me? We're just gonna do one song. This isn't the end, this is the beginning. Yeah, we got some good
see, it would be so